Okay, so we've got a ton of questions about this whole TikTok ban thing.
Hmm.
And, obviously our listeners are super curious
Right.
about like what this all means for Gen Alpha, especially with that January 19th deadline kind of hanging over our heads.
Hmm.
There's just so much up in the air right now,
Yeah.
like what happens to all that data, all those videos,
Right.
millions of followers?
Absolutely. It's a pivotal moment for a generation that has really grown up with this app.
Right.
It's not just an app to them. It's like woven into their social lives,
Totally.
their entertainment, their news even.
And think about it, like a third of all Americans use TikTok.
It's huge.
That's a huge chunk of the population. But for Gen Alpha, it's like their digital home base.
Right. It is.
So what happens when that home base is potentially just like yanked out from under them?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, for a lot of them, their main source of entertainment, their way of connecting with their friends,
Right.
Their creative outlet,
Yeah.
it all revolves around TikTok.
Yeah.
And if this ban goes through,
Yeah.
there's a real risk of disrupting their social media routines in a really significant way.
I mean, it's almost like they'd be losing a part of their online identity.
Yeah.
Like all those videos they've created, the followers they've built up,
Hmm.
the communities they've fostered. It's all just kind of like,
In limbo.
yeah.
Absolutely. And you can't forget about the creators either.
Oh, right.
Imagine you're an influencer who has spent years building an audience,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you have to migrate to a new platform.
Right.
Are those followers going to follow you?
Right.
Is that content going to translate? There's a lot of unknowns,
Mm.
and that can be really unsettling for people who have, made this their living.
Yeah, totally. And it just makes you wonder if another platform can ever really replace what TikTok offers,
That's the thing.
for creators and viewers alike.
Yeah.
I mean, there are other video sharing apps out there, but
Mhm.
TikTok has a certain...
Je ne sais quoi.
It does, right?
And I think part of that magic is the algorithm.
Right.
It's designed to keep users engaged.
Yeah.
And it's really good at figuring out what you like and feeding you more of that.
Yes.
So that's what makes that For You page so addictive. And I think that's a big part of what sets it apart.
So if TikTok does get banned,
Yeah.
we're not just talking about losing an app. We're talking about like a seismic shift
Potentially. Yeah.
in the social media landscape. Creators and users
Scrambling.
yeah, to find a new digital home.
Yeah. A digital migration, if you will.
And it's not just about finding a new place to post videos. It's about, it brings up these questions of who controls our online experiences, how our data is used,
Right.
what happens to our digital footprint when a platform disappears.
All of that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so much more than just like losing
It's,
funny videos and dance trends.
It is.
It's about data privacy,
Absolutely.
content ownership, the power dynamics between us and the platforms we rely on.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And those are conversations that, extend way beyond TikTok.
Right.
This is just, highlighting some bigger questions
Yeah.
that we're facing as a society
Exactly.
about how we navigate the digital world, how we protect our information,
Mhm.
who's really in control.
And this is all happening, of course, against the backdrop of this potential sale of
Yeah.
TikTok to a U.S. company.
Yeah.
But even if that happens, doesn't it just kind of shift the power
That's the question.
from one entity to another?
Yeah. I mean, let's say it gets sold.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about a whole new set of guidelines,
Mhm.
algorithms,
Mm,
privacy rules, all determined by whoever buys it.
right.
And those decisions, they directly impact how Gen Alpha experiences the internet.
Totally.
It's a lot of power in the hands of one company.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
About the ripple effects, because this isn't just about
All right.
whether or not an app survives. It's about...
Who shapes the digital landscape
Right.
for this generation
Absolutely.
that's essentially grown up online.
That's what makes this so compelling.
Yeah.
We're not just watching the fate of TikTok. We're watching
Right.
the future of the internet.
Okay, so we've talked about the impact of this potential ban
Yeah?
on Gen Alpha's, social lives, their online habits.
Mhm.
We've touched on these big questions about data privacy,
Right.
who controls the digital landscape.
Yeah.
But what about Gen Alpha themselves?
Yeah.
Like, what can they actually do
All right.
in the face of all this uncertainty?
Yeah.
What steps can they take to prepare for whatever might come next?
Well, I think that's a great question. And
Yeah.
it's something that Gen Alpha is, uniquely positioned to answer.
Right.
And what I find really interesting is that this whole situation actually gives them an opportunity to be proactive.
So, like, what are some practical steps
Yeah,
that they can take?
totally.
Like, get ready for a potential TikTok-less future. Yeah, I mean, one of the most important things
Yeah.
is to download their data.
Okay.
You know, think of it like grabbing a digital scrapbook
Nah, love that. Yeah.
before the whole house gets bulldozed.
Right.
It's a way to preserve those memories, the connections, their content.
So even if the app disappears,
Right.
those memories, those connections, they're not gone.
Exactly.
Okay, but how easy is it to actually do that?
So TikTok does have a download data feature,
Okay.
but it can be, you know, a little bit of a,
A little tricky.
like a digital obstacle course to find it.
Yeah, okay. But it's there.
It's there.
Okay, so that's one thing. What else?
Another thing they can do is save their favorite videos.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like making a personal highlight reel.
Right.
You know, download those videos right to their phone or computer.
Makes sense, yeah.
So even if the app goes away,
Mm-hmm.
they still have those moments.
Okay, so we've got the data, we've got the videos. What about connecting with their favorite creators?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, will they lose touch if everyone just scatters to different platforms?
Well, I think this highlights the importance of, you know, diversifying
Right.
their online presence.
Okay.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah.
Explore other platforms now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, see where their favorite creators are hanging out
Okay.
and start following them there, kind of preemptively.
So it's not such a shock to the system
Exactly.
if and when this transition happens.
Yeah.
And by, going to those other platforms, they
Mhm.
might even discover new communities, new
Yeah.
ways of interacting.
Exactly. And it's a chance to,
Yeah.
expand their horizons,
Right.
not be totally reliant on one app.
It just reminds me of how adaptable Gen Alpha already is.
Right.
They're digital natives.
They are.
They've grown up navigating this ever-changing internet.
Totally.
So this whole thing, while it's definitely disruptive, could also be like a catalyst
Totally.
for them to shape the future of social media in new ways.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already leading the way in terms of how we create and consume content.
Yeah.
They're the trendsetters.
Mm-hmm.
They're the innovators.
Right.
They're not afraid to experiment
Totally.
with new platforms, new forms of expression.
It's pretty exciting to think about
It is.
what they might come up with.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw how they embraced TikTok,
Right.
made it this global phenomenon.
Totally.
Who's to say they won't do the same thing
Exactly.
with whatever comes next?
And that brings us to, I think, a really crucial point.
Okay.
It's not just about losing an app or finding a new one.
Right.
It's about fostering digital literacy.
Okay.
You know, Gen Alpha needs the tools,
Yeah.
the critical thinking skills to navigate all of this,
Mm-hmm.
this crazy world.
Right. So it's like becoming informed consumers.
Exactly.
And not just passive users.
Yes.
It's about understanding, like, how these algorithms actually work,
Mm.
how our data is being collected and used,
Yes.
how to protect our privacy.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's about empowering them
Yeah.
to make informed choices
Mm-hmm.
about the platforms they use, how they share their data,
Okay.
how they engage with content.
Yeah. It's like we're talking about a whole new kind of
It is.
digital citizenship
Yeah.
where young people are equipped
Right.
to not just enjoy the benefits of the internet,
Mm-hmm.
but to understand, like, the complexities.
And the nuances.
Yeah, and to advocate for their own rights
Exactly.
in the digital sphere.
And this situation with TikTok,
Yeah,
as challenging as it is,
right.
I think it presents a really valuable opportunity
Okay.
to start having these conversations
Yeah.
and to equip Gen Alpha with what they need
Mm-hmm.
to thrive in this
Tilts my
world.
life.
Yeah, it's a chance to go from being reactive to being proactive,
Okay.
from consumers to creators,
Right.
from subjects to citizens.
Wow, that's a really,
It's a shift.
yeah, it's a really powerful way to frame it. And
Yeah.
it's so much bigger than TikTok, isn't it?
It is. It's about,
It applies to everything.
yeah,
Every platform, every interaction.
it's about raising a generation
right.
that's not just tech savvy,
Mm-hmm.
but like digitally empowered.
Yes, informed.
Right.
And that's where things get really interesting.
You were saying things get interesting when we think about Gen Alpha actually like shaping the future of the internet.
Yeah, I mean, just look at what they've already done with TikTok.
Yeah.
They've created their own trends, like their own language almost.
Right.
A whole culture on this platform, and I don't think that energy just disappears
Right.
if TikTok goes away.
It's got to go somewhere.
Exactly. It'll find new outlets, new platforms.
So this could be like a catalyst almost
I do so.
for even more innovation.
Yeah. Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Right.
And who knows, maybe the next big social media platform won't come from,
Yeah.
Silicon Valley. Maybe it'll come from a bunch of teenagers.
That had to think outside the box
Exactly.
because of this.
Yeah, they had to come up with something new, something better,
Yeah.
something that really reflects their values.
And that takes us back to what we were talking about earlier,
It does.
about them not just being consumers of technology,
Right.
but becoming creators and innovators.
It's about shifting the power dynamic,
Yeah.
Right now, so much of the internet is controlled by these big companies.
Mm,
But what if Gen Alpha said, no, we're going to do it our way?
right.
What if they started building their own platform?
Their own communities.
Exactly. Spaces where they set the rules.
Yeah.
And I think we're already seeing some of that happening.
Like with the rise of independent creators,
Exactly.
these niche online communities.
Yeah, the decentralized platforms.
It feels like there's this growing desire
Yeah,
for more autonomy
totally.
and more control.
And Gen Alpha is leading the charge.
They're pushing for transparency, privacy, user-centric design.
So what does this all mean for our listener who's been trying to make sense of this whole TikTok saga
Right.
and what it means for Gen Alpha?
Well, I think the takeaway here is that this is really just the beginning.
Okay.
The story of Gen Alpha and how they interact with the internet.
Yeah.
It's still being written.
Mm-hmm.
And while this whole TikTok thing might feel like a huge disruption,
Right.
it's also an opportunity
For them to.
for them to step up, to innovate, to really shape the digital world
Yeah.
in a way that reflects their values.
To be the architects of their own digital future,
Exactly.
which is, a future full of possibility.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Me too. So to our listener out there, stay curious, stay engaged,
Yeah.
stay hopeful. The future of the internet is in good hands.
It is.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
into the world of Gen Alpha and the potential TikTok ban. We'll see you next time.